Hi, and welcome to our panel today on digital twin, bridging the gap between vision and reality. Today, we're going to really try and understand what do clients really want from the digital twin, and then we'll move beyond that to try and understand a little bit more about the current state of the digital twin, what companies have been able to achieve, but also some of the gaps that they face, whether those gaps are technology gaps, people gaps, or process gaps. But we've got a great conversation planned for you today. What we have is a series of experts with different perspectives on the digital twin from different walks of life. Really excited. Thank you all to the panel for joining. And actually, I'd like to also thank AMC Bridge for organizing this webinar. That's been extremely helpful. And I'm as excited to learn from this webinar as I am to present on any of the normal ones that I do. So I'm just going to briefly introduce the panelists here, and then they're going to give a little bit more background about themselves as we get into each of the questions. But we've got Igor Sinman from AMC Bridge. We've got Jim Quancy from Autodesk, David Weirmacall from Epic Games, Marzio Balpagni from UK BIM Alliance, and Rick Dunlap from Brand Safeway. I'm Jim Brown from Tech Clarity, and we're an independent research firm, and I'll be your moderator. And we're going to try and have this as open of a conversation as we can. As participants, if you have questions, please put them into the question tab, or if you have any difficulties, you can put them in the question chat tab or into the chat and let us know. And then as we get to the end, we'll try and make sure to cover all of your questions. Any questions that we can't cover, we will try to get back to you directly to make sure you get the answer. Okay, so we're going to get started. Really, one of the first places we just want to start is a little bit of introduction. So what I'm going to do is just ask each of the panelists. Igor, we're going to start with you. Just a little bit about you and what your company's role is, regarding the digital twin.
Thank you, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you for joining. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you, the audience, for joining this conversation that AMC organized. AMC Bridge is a software development consultancy, and we specialized in most of our projects, if not 100%, in engineering, architecture, and construction, manufacturing areas. And being consultants, we see this move to digitalization, and very often we see projects that some people call digital twin and some people don't, but they, in essence, fit into this definition. And we kind of sort of would be very good to bring together a panel of experts from different perspectives, from vendors, from implementers like us, from the customers and users, to kind of get our hands around what the digital twin, how people understand it, is it useful at all, and if it is, how we move forward to have it as a reality and kind of generally accept approach to problems that it's supposed to solve. So that's a background.
Great. Jim, would you jump in, please?
Sure. Jim Quancy, Autodesk, developer advocacy and support. My team takes care of software developers who are using Autodesk technologies, whether it's a desktop or cloud or whatever, as part of dashboards, production environments, and we see a lot of usage of our technologies as components within digital twins. And it's all over the place. Machines, factories, buildings, kind of runs the gamut.
Great. David, if you'd introduce yourself and let us know what epic things you're up to. Forgive the pun.
Perfect. So my name is David Weirmacall. I work at the AEC Enterprise team at Epic Games. So in short, we have this great tool called the Unreal Engine. It's a game engines platform which is used to create all the big hit games, but it's also used across a number of different industries, things like automotive and media, and I sit in the architecture, engineering, construction world. And part of that is developing an ecosystem and functionality around how this game platform can be used in the digital twin space, to primarily create this link between the end users, the consumers, the occupants, the citizens of a city, and their data and the back end. So we are sort of a small part in a much bigger sort of digital twin sphere, but that's where we sit.
Great, thank you, David. Marzia?
Hi everyone, I'm Marzia Bolpagni and I represent the UK BIM Alliance. Is a community that in the UK aims to make a building information model as business as usual and really to advance the application of digital transformation. In my day-to-day, I work for Mace, that is a construction and consultancy company that is working at international level. And I'm responsible in helping clients in set their digital strategies and implementing methodologies, processes, and of course also technologies that include everything regarding digital. And in particular, today we're speaking about digital twins. So thank you again for the invitation.
Fantastic. What a great panel. What I'd like to do now is actually start and try and understand a little bit more about the digital twin and what do clients really want?
Sorry, Jim, but I think you missed Rick.
Did I really do that? Rick Dunlap, my friend. Please introduce yourself. The man that needs no introduction. Thank you, Igor.
So that's what I get for picking on you with Texas jokes before the.
It happens.
Yeah. So thanks very much. I'm appreciative of being here. Appreciative for the people attending. My perspective is much like my company that I work for's perspective. So we're industrial contractors, civil and infrastructure contractors. We're trying to find ways for technology to help our field teams be more effective. My personal background is 30 plus years in the industry. And the story to that is that I was there when we brought the very first IBM computer out onto a job site, right? And how are we going to use this thing? And then CAD comes to the surface, and how are we going to use this tool, right? And so it's an evolution. It's been fun to watch, and I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Rick. And Igor, thank you for I'm just trying to prove to everybody this is not pre-recorded. So let's go ahead now to the next question about what do clients really want from the digital twin, and maybe one way to think about that is, what value are they trying to achieve? Oftentimes people apply new technologies or new approaches, because they should. But digital twin has, if you ask 5 people, you'll get 10 different definitions of the digital twin. Let's focus on the value. What do they really want to get out of it? Rick, I'm going to start with you this time.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a mixed bag of what people want. I think industry in general, or my experience is that people are looking to solve short-term problems, and then solving short-term problems in a repeated way turns into something more strategic. And so I think a lot of the maturity curve for the people we interact with is that initial, how can I save some money? How can I be more efficient? Internally for us, it's about how can we deliver value for our customers? And so how can I give instructions to 40,000 people in the field more effectively with fewer mistakes in a leaner way and more aligned with all the other stakeholders on a project? So clients who are, or facilities who are more, mature in their journey on digital twins, they're trying to go to the next level with, more sophisticated IoT. And not only that, how can I use that data from IoT to be predictive and do things like that. So I think there's a mixed bag, and I think that's part of the dynamic in the marketplace that's making it difficult for people to figure out how they jump into that slipstream, quite honestly, right? So you have to look at your own organization and figure out where you jump in and why and how, and do it for yourself, not for someone else. So.
Great, thanks, Rick. Marzia, what are you seeing people wanting to achieve from the digital twin? And obviously with the BIM Alliance, the UK BIM Alliance, I'm sure you get a very broad perspective.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we see very different application and interest coming from the industry and from clients. And some digital twins can be demanded by the clients and the owner of the asset, but also can be used independently by people that would like to use during other phases, as can be during construction and also operation and maintenance. So really is something to understand the value and how this can help them to have a better monitoring regarding their asset, but also the users to understand how we use the space, why we are building and why we are using. So there is also this human part, and to make visible what is usually is difficult to control, especially taking into account that the sector where we work is quite complex. So that is really to help to have a better understanding of our assets.
Great, thank you. David, what are people asking you about for the digital twin?
I mean, being third on the list, you're starting to run out of all the good value propositions. So I don't want to repeat any things. I agree with both of what's been said. I think the kind of highest level thing that people are looking for is insight into their operations, buildings, assets. And that's really what they're looking at. And I think at the kind of highest level, data doesn't provide insight by itself. If you're just collecting information and it sits there, you're not going to automatically know how to make things more efficient or better. So contextualization and learning from that data, I think, is one of the biggest values that people are looking for. But I think we're also at this stage where digital twins are such a POC at the moment, where people are still trying to understand fully what the value is, or really to capitalize on what the value is. But I think just contextualizing that information and being able to derive information or value from it is the kind of key thing here.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's the right question, Jim. What's the value? And I think everybody attending needs to answer this question and not just say, I have a digital twin project or strategy. It may be about a machine that you're trying to maximize uptime or reduce maintenance costs or reduce warranty costs, which is significantly different than it's a factory and I need uptime and throughput and efficiency, or it's a technical building, like a process plant or a pharmaceutical, or, a commercial building where it may be about, I want to charge higher rents because we have got more sustainability, lower carbon footprint. I can really get those premium customers because they absolutely love it, while at the same time reducing the cost of me maintaining the building. So it's everybody has to sit back and go, which one you after? Because they're all different.
So Igor, you're at the end of the chain, but I also realize that you have a broad perspective on this because you get asked about this from a lot of different perspectives. So
that's true. And I would go back to what Rick said. In our experience, very few customers come to us and say, hey, we want a digital twin. But very many customers come to us and say, we want this workflow or this process to be digitized, and we want to get more efficient in selling stuff, or more efficient in maintaining stuff, or more efficient in detecting the defects and problems before they start, or immediately be notified and being able to proactively react to that. And during the discussion, when we mentioned to them, oh, it's very well fits the definition of digital twin, quite a few people say, oh, really? I haven't heard about it. And so when they read it, yes, true, digital twin. So for me, digital twin is kind of a little bit of theoretical concept that allows us to think about the problem, but everybody understands it differently. And what people want at the end, as Rick mentioned, is more efficiency, kind of improvement to the bottom line, especially now day and age when the labor force is short supply, then being able to automate certain processes that are possible to automate versus kind of finding people who may do it. But as a kind of concept to think about it, I think it's very powerful, but then when applied to a specific case, it kind of morphs to something different and for different customers.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind just jumping in on that because I've found this a couple of times where, and it's controversial on a digital twin panel. Sometimes describing a digital twin without actually calling it a digital twin helps people understand where you can get value from. I mean, if you were to say, listen, if I could see a live representation or collect data on my asset, what value can I get from this? And for architects, this is, making better design decisions to speed up a process. For owners and operators, it's for insights into how their operations work or how their real estate assets are performing. And I think sometimes digital twins, the tagline, can be a little bit of a red herring and throw people into this direction to think of things a particular way rather than taking a step back and going, if I had this thing that we're not going to call a digital twin, what value can I get from that? And it's I've had some very interesting conversations whenever you remove the term, because there are just so many definitions and so many sort of people saying it's this or it's this or it's this. Like, let's just not talk about digital twin. Just talk about what is valuable for you in this day and age where we have the capabilities to do all these amazing things.
Yeah, great add on that, David. I appreciate it. Let's get the audience involved. We're going to launch a poll, and what I'd like to do is have you share with us a little bit about how mature are your plans for the digital twin, and for achieving value from the digital twin. So we'll give people just a little bit of time to answer this, and then we'll share it back with you. Are your plans very mature? Are they somewhat mature? Are you still currently developing your plans, or are you investigating your needs, or do you have no planned activity around the digital twin? So give people just a little bit more time, and then let's go ahead. Still a couple more coming in. All right, we've got a little over half of people have responded. Keep responding if you can, but let's go ahead and share that out. And I think what you see is pretty clear that there are not many companies, maybe an eighth of companies or so, or a seventh are very mature. Get up to maybe close to a third that are somewhat mature, and then you get to sort of that middle section of currently developing plans. But only 14% saying no planned activity. And that may be obviously a little self-selecting based on the fact that we're on a digital twin webcast. But I think it's very interesting to see that there's people that have moved along pretty well, but there are a lot more that are still looking and trying to understand. Let's go back to our panel. And what I'd like to do is come to our next question, which is, what are the requirements for an effective digital twin? How important are things like modeling, data collection, simulation, analytics? What makes a digital twin successful? What are the underpinnings? And David, you've been in the middle. You've been on one end or in the middle every time. So we're going to start with you.
I'm going to be very biased in this. We're a game engine focused on the visualization side of it and the experiential side, which I get that some people don't really see that as being a key component, but I think that from our position, what we kind of see as being an effective digital twin is that ability to engage people and that ability to understand and have control of your data. So requirements, first of all, if we just go back, it'll be, obviously data structure, how it's managed. But I think on the other side of that, it's really looking at how you use the twin and how you utilize it in a step-by-step process. And that can be from imagine it as a customer user journey, which is not always what people really contemplate whenever they design interfaces or they design sort of programs, is what is the user journey as they use this twin, and how is that user journey affected by whenever they click on something or how they see something. So yeah, it's important in terms of like things like modeling, data capture, simulation, analytics. Again, every man and his dog is going to have their own idea that, oh, it definitely needs this but doesn't need this, or it needs this and doesn't need this. And I would say the requirements are probably just more focused on making sure that it's built for the right use at the end of the day, and the experience around it is sort of perfected too.
Yeah, so follow the value, then find out how to deliver it, what the requirements are. Igor, you get asked about this a lot, you know, and you're one of the people that actually can pull these things together behind the scenes. What do you believe are some of the biggest requirements?
Yeah, I would support David's point, at least as a starting. We are visual creatures. When we see something, it has often much more impact on us than when we hear or read, right? So very often the requests for digital twin-like projects come from visualization. And but important point of it is to be able to combine at least 2 or 3 streams of data and present kind of more enhanced picture, not complete is impossible, but enhanced picture of the real assets, the way you not only can see it, but measure, model, and importantly predict, right? So, but it's a process. It's if you put it the bar too high, it's very hard to achieve. So, but the starting point, very often, is visualization, and then once people see things and can present in 3D or even 4D view, they start asking, oh, can we add this source of information? Can we add PNID information to the scan of the facility? Can we add real-time measurements of the compressors and pipe pressures into the picture, and so on and so forth? But my point is, visualization is almost always the part of the digital twin requirement, but it has to incorporate at least 2 to 3 different sources to present a more complete picture of what's going on in a real physical world. And I mean, the holy grail is not only to see, but monitor, predict, and kind of be proactive in your actions.
Jim, you've got your Ford shirt on, so I know you've got a lot of capabilities you can bring towards the digital twin. What do you see as the most important, or what do you believe clients see as the most important?
I think it's more advice that people recognize it's a journey, and where you end up will probably not be where you thought you were going to end up when you start. So you want that vision, you want to know what value am I going to try to get first, but then you got to use an agile approach. So, you know, maybe the first 2 weeks, I want to get a model that I can see and go, hey, that's great. And then the second 2 weeks, maybe I want to hook in some IoT data and go, is this getting me any value? Maybe the third 2 weeks, it's like, hey, how's this going to work on a mobile device? And really go at it agile. And, you know, some people go, well, that's a software thing. And I go, well, look at SpaceX and Tesla. You know, they are agile. They got a big vision, but they're getting there kind of a chunk at a time. And that also means, and it's kind of a call out, who's ever doing the development work, you know, whether it's AMC Bridge or some internal folks, you know, a lot of people go, well, I'm going to make a big plan and we're going to have this kind of fixed cost project and we're going to implement it and we're done. And it just, no, this is agile. Assume you're going to invest on a steady basis every month, and there's kind of no end to this. You really got to understand that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Great.
I have a few comments, if I could, Jim.
Yeah,
I think there's 2 things that are important in this piece, right? I think most people start out with, I'm going to build a digital twin, and they try to build that perfect digital twin of what it means in time and space at that point in their organization. And to everyone's comment, right? You know, Igor made a comment about everyone wants it to be something that, you know, that point, and then Jim's comment about agile. I think trying to start with perfection is going to be a recipe for failure. I think identifying, you know, what adds value to your workflows, your work streams, and, you know, your opportunity to add value internally or to your clients is what's important. One of the biggest disconnects I see is that all functional organizations within a company and all clients, you know, that we work for, and all owners that we may work for, all have huge functional organizations. and they're all trying to solve this in their own unique way. Well, one of the values of digital twin is use Pareto approach, right? Identify what's the most valuable work streams in your project or running your facility or building, and start there, and then start to add on the other stakeholders, and you end up with a very comprehensive single point of truth, and much more efficient, right? You start to really get energy and synergy from doing that, instead of everyone trying to solve world hunger in their own version, right? So that's the value to me.
Yeah. Marcia, what do you believe is the biggest requirements to be successful with a digital twin?
Yeah, it's quite difficult to pick one, but I think that in the UK as an industry, I think that there has been different initiative. Of course, the UK BIM Alliance that I mentioned, but also we have a National Digital Twin Program promoted by the Centre for Digital Britain. We have also the Construction Innovation Hub and other initiatives that they really, working together with the industry experts, we really agreed that the first starting point is really defining the requirements in a standardized way. So really working on understanding what you need and trying to standardize the requirements. I know that also they are listening also different colleagues that have been working in the industry. So, also recently has been published the construction playbook, where really the key points are really about all these topics that we wanted to harmonize, digitalize, and rationalize. So the first really point is really harmonize. So if you want to really have effective digital twins, we need really to think about how at the moment we are specifying our requirements and to find an harmonized way. And also, if I can add, the second point is really about the culture, and also to have the skills for these digital twins, both to understand and to use. So different reports also has been published regarding the new skills that are needed in order then to define a strategy and to implement a digital twin concept, first of all, even to jump on the technology implementation.
Great. I love this panel because I asked a technology question and all of you went back to business needs and how can you add value to customers, and I think that's where everything should center. Let's go to our second poll question, and what we'd like to understand now is from the participants that are joining today, how well does your company understand what's needed to achieve your digital twin objectives? Is there common understanding across the business? Are there multiple complementary views, or maybe there's some multiple conflicting views that still need to be worked out? Or are you perhaps investigating your needs, or I'm hoping we don't see a whole lot of people in general confusion and not knowing where to go with the digital twin requirements. So we saw quite a mix in terms of the maturity of vision. This will tell us a little bit about, do people know how to get there? So let's go ahead and share those results. They seem to be slowing down in terms of coming in. So it's interesting, 20% have a common understanding, and then we have sort of roughly half, 53%, between multiple complementary and multiple conflicting viewpoints. And I think that may not even be bad to have, especially complementary viewpoints, because there are different things that digital twins can accomplish, and reconciling those and focusing on the value is going to be the most important thing. But we do also see some that are still working through conflicting views, and also investigating needs. There are some out there that have some general confusion as well, and that's not surprising. This is an emerging technology and an emerging approach. So thank you for sharing that. Very much appreciate the participation from the audience. Let's go back to the polls and back to our panel and try and understand now what is where do you feel companies are today in terms of implementing the digital thread? You saw a little bit about their strategy that they shared with you, and then also what challenges are they facing, and maybe we'll take again that people, process, and technology approach. Marcia, this time let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I think that regarding implementation, we see both to support something like mandatory requirements that can be, for example, on site for safety reason or also to improve productivity. So really linking the virtual replica with sensors in order to understand how we are progressing on site, for example, but also once is built, really to understand if the performances that we set are now met. I think that has been mentioned before, I think from Igor, that I think sustainability is also something that is really driving the implementation, and I'd also see in different companies, including mine, that in order to achieve a sustainable future, now we are trying to use technology as an enabler in order to achieve these higher aims. And challenges, I think that I briefly touch on that, is really at the moment we spend most of the time to clean data and to make this data available. So it's really, again, I want to go back to defining clear requirements. When we produce information, they are already structured in a way that can enable an easier implementation of visualization on analytics. It is really what this digital thread can help us. So my point is, there are different standards, and I want to mention the ISO 19650 that is about information management. We're using BIM as the UK BIM Alliance. We are also creating different free available guidances. And one topic is the level of information needs. So trying to explain that is important to start from the requirements in a clear way so that they can implement in our digital representations.
Great, thank you. Rick, let's throw that one over to you. Where do you think companies are today with the digital twin, and what are some of the challenges and hurdles they're facing?
Sure. Yeah. So again, I don't want to give a standard kind of canned answer that like I'm saying, but it really is. It's a mixed bag. Where I'm seeing the most advancement is if you think about the digital twin. So many of the buildings and facilities that exist in our world today were built more than 10 or 15 years ago, meaning they're sort of outside the scope of how do I have a digital twin without doing a lot of retro engineering and retro modeling, retro data management. So where I'm seeing the most advancement is where facilities have owners and clients have been very strategic in how they get their future projects engineered. They're building 3D models. A lot of our major clients are very involved in industry standards groups, right? Especially in petrochemical side of the business and AEC. So that's helping. So what they're doing from that is then the innovators within those facilities are saying, hey, I can use this model, I can connect some IoT to it, and I can do some neat things, capture some data, go drive some Six Sigma reliability programs on my rotating equipment and those type things. The rest of the people are all sort of still fumbling around, quite honestly, stuck in their method of how I design things, how I look at things. Our company, we're sort of unique. We don't own the buildings and we don't own the processes that happen within these buildings. We support them. So where we're at is trying to be supportive in the foundational elements of things that might interact with their BIM environment and ultimately their digital twin environment. So all fully BIM 3D engineering outputs, the capability to go capture as-built data and use that, share that data with the client, scan to BIM that facilitates retroactively creating digital twins for legacy facilities and plants. So again, it's a mixed bag. It's the normal sort of software fights. Which version of software are we going to use for digital twins, right? It's some of that silliness, but some of them that have used it in construction are farther along.
I'd love to follow that if that's okay. I think that the title of this webinar kind of helps explain where we are as a kind of group on digital twins. We're talking about value and what does the client really want, which kind of gives this impression the client doesn't really know what they want. There's a great book to kind of expand on what Rick was talking about called Crossing the Chasm, which explains about the marketing and selling of like tech products in the mainstream market. And it has these different areas from the innovators to the early adopters to the early majority to the large majority. And there's this chasm between the early adopters and the early majority. And we are there. We are at this chasm where we have these use cases. We have these early people who have adopted it, but there's a reason that we're not jumping into the early majority. And these webinars and you know, today is a great example of how we're trying to bridge that chasm. You know, and I think a lot of the questions you're asking are great because they kind of go along what Jeffrey Moore in his book talks about, which is, you know, it's across the chasm. You need to, you know, choose your target market, or you need to understand the whole product concept behind it, and positioning that and marketing that. And the very last one I find to be the most interesting in this chasm is deciding on the proper pricing. Because everyone wants value, and money is always kind of the driver in these things. You know, it's great to be altruistic, but let's be honest, everyone wants sort of a money reward out of this. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. So I think everyone's jumping sort of maybe 8 steps whenever we have to go back and doing what we're doing now, which is actually trying to address each one of these stages to how we get past this chasm, because we are most definitely stuck in the early majority, the early adopters rather than the early majority. So that's where I think we are, personally.
Totally agree.
Jim, actually, Igor looks like he's excited to say something, and then Jim will come back to you.
Yeah, I'm with David on the kind of identification where we are in the process, and we see that kind of a new industries like renewable energy, right, with a lot of remote installations and not everyday attended installations are very interested in this concept and being able to monitor and kind of predict behavior and schedule maintenance at the proper time, not when it kind of breaks and there is no electricity in Texas, right? Like we saw this winter, unfortunately.
Yeah, cold.
And the same I would say about 3D printing. Again, it's expensive machines, and people would like to have them working productively, not producing kind of defective parts. And that's where kind of clear return on investment, if we improve the output by 5–10%, it's significant. Where we see some hesitation or kind of uncertainty is on a more traditional, as Rick mentioned, kind of already created facilities, already created assets. How do you retrofit, or how do you kind of implement digital twin technologies there? And that's where I think the Jim mentioned kind of iterative or agile approach is exactly effective, and better start small and start identify the really problematic issues and try to digitize them, and then basically thread them together into the twin representation versus kind of starting from the top. Oh, I need digital twin complete, and then it's most often the recipe for failure versus kind of doing iterative and identifying the areas where it's most effectively applied and implemented.
Jim, where do you think companies are, and what are they struggling with?
I'm going to disagree. I think we're way farther along. And maybe I have a unique view. If you go back about 4 years, there's probably 24 partners we were working with, building out the first digital twins. The technology was a little creaky. The IoT stuff was a little creaky, dealing with the models. And that is no longer the case. I know, I don't know, maybe 500 partners who are building some part of digital twins, whether they call it a digital twin or not. And you go down those kind of early adopters from 4 years ago, they were in production. They bring on new customers every day. Somebody like, Moicon, who does factories, Microsoft and Willow, doing buildings. Autodesk has Tandem, which is about kind of construction and handover digital twins. And I can, DPR, who's a construction company, who's doing digital twins for technical facilities like hospitals and laboratories. We're just, so are a lot of people kind of confused and holding back? Yeah, they are, but it's not because of the technology or not because there aren't people out there who know how to do it. It's probably, organizational, and, change is always painful. but the water's warm.
I would like to clarify. I agree in some sense, just because it's a discussion. In some areas, I think we're great in digital twins. I think we spoke about this, just in off the calls. If you want to look at a really rich area for digital twins and really mature market, look at energy and resources. That's like a huge area where digital twins are so well used. Oil and gas is another area which they have been using digital twins very well for a long time. And most customers in those fields have digital twins of their components. I would rephrase that maybe we're at the chasm in terms of architecture, engineering, and construction. Whereas manufacturing, I think, is a little bit more developed than we are in the architecture industry. Construction, again, we're getting it. I think it's all positive. I love your positive attitude, Jim. Of we're there, and there's these big companies using it. I think that we have a lot to learn from these people who are doing it, and maybe these other industries that are more mature in their market and digital twin offerings, and how they manage to cross their chasm, and how we as an industry could potentially leverage that to use that for ourselves rather than trying to figure it out from the beginning again. So a little bit agree, a little bit disagree, but what these panels are for, right?
That's okay to disagree. We're gonna mix it up. And I think we see some varying views on how mature things are and how much companies have accomplished. Let's talk about, there's no magic bullet, right? That's gonna be the one thing that's gonna help people go over the top and be able to be successful with their digital twins. But what advice can we give them, or what do we think are some of the either technologies or best practices that maybe we've even learned through prior initiatives that we can apply here? Igor, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, thank you. And Jim actually made a very good point, and I completely agree that if we compare state of the art, let's say 5-7 years ago when the term was first coined, the technology was very much in the early stages. What's very exciting is actually technology is here and technology is available. The sometimes disappointing fact for our customers, it's not off-the-shelf package that you can download, install, and start playing with. So the components that you can build your digital twin from is mostly here, but they are what they are. They are components. And for the success of the project, we're still coming back to the identification of the problem and the kind of final goals that we want to try to achieve. So the positive message, components are here, and the software vendors like David's and Jim's companies are working hard to make them available. But on the other side, there's no one big system like we are talking about SAP implementation. Everybody knows what it means. I mean, to a degree, you go to SAP, buy a license, and they go to somebody who implemented for you. Here is more discrete part of tools that you have to select to fit specific definition and specific goals. But tools are here already here, and they're mature enough to have a robust system at the end. Would it be full digital twin or not? It's another matter, but the positive message, tools are here. Now we have to implement them more widely. Apply them more.
I'm going to turn back to you now. It sounds like Igor agrees that the technology is there. You mentioned that maybe it was some other aspects. If we think about crossing that chasm, I mean, what opens the floodgates then? That allows people to do more with digital twins than maybe they're doing today.
Is that to Jim?
I thought it was to Jim. Maybe he thinks it's to Jim Brown. I don't
know. No, I do know. This is, it's a cultural thing. It's change. People have to decide we not be scared. We do need to recognize digital twins is kind of a piece of the digital enterprise, of the digital transformation. Some of this development work, which may scare people, look, it needs to be integrated into, depending on your use case, it may need to be integrated into your CRM system, your ERP system, your financial systems, whatever you use for maintenance, you know, Maximo or Archibus or kind of whatever. And you know, if you're an IT organization, yeah, you need to do those kind of things. That's what, you know, digitization of your business is about. I think Rick mentioned, you know, you have to decide, what are you going to pick? You know, are my enterprise systems, you know, is it Microsoft Dynamics? Is it SharePoint? Is it a Azure stack, or am I on AWS, or is it SAP? Or you got to pick your sources of truth that you're going to connect to digitize the company. But then you just go do it. Again, agile, piece at a time. This is not magic. People really need not, I'm afraid what people think is, I'm building this big honking client server thing that's going to take 2 years. When it's like, no, it's like building, this is more like a website, a database. And you can take it small pieces at a time and learn as you go and zig and zag based on the value you're getting.
Yep. Yeah, I want to jump on that right there, Jim, if I can. So, so the real opportunity from my perspective, what I try to preach to people that I interact with is, to Jim's point, right? You know, he's touching on a couple of comments. Is one of the disconnects is you need to have a single point of truth for the ecosystem of your organization. And you can't start with a perfectly 100% built out single point of truth for your organization. So if you think about, you know, if you go in a room with your functional teams, your clients, the market, where the industry's going, and you come out with, this is what I would want in a future state, what are the foundational elements I need for that? And then what are the first most compelling business cases to achieve, you know, using the digital twin? And what happens is this is a change event for organizations, because they're parochial in their approaches many times. This is the way accounting has always been done. This is the way finance has always been done. This is how fleet management has always been done. But when you show them the art of what could be, and you show them with a really neat, innovative way to do it and a successful business case, what happens is you build synergies and energies, right? That's what starts to happen. And people get very innovative and see the art of what could be. Right now, everyone's sort of stuck in their own lane trying to solve it. And that's really the opportunity for the digital twin, is to bring together that whole ecosystem to deliver a project or run and maintain a facility or whatever it may be in your case. And
Good, I can also.
You brought up the digital. You brought up the chasm. What's the piece that gets people over it? What's needed?
Yeah. So for me.
No, yeah, sorry, David, please.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, for me. Oh, yeah. Again, I'll echo a little bit of what Igor said. Every product manager will tell you that, you know, you focus on the problem, not the solution. And I think lots of people are starting with digital twins solution, but what's the problem? But I think what helps people get over the chasm is, first of all, address that. So I don't want to re-talk about that because Igor's done it. But the other thing that we hear customers talking a lot is like, I want to build a digital twin. I'm like, great. You've got the 3D side, which is the brilliant thing about the kind of AEC industry and the manufacturing industry, is that we work in 3D with things like BIM, so we have these models. And then I'm like, well, okay, what data do you have? And they're like, oh, data? No, don't have any data. And so I think people need to understand that, you know, all these benefits of having a digital twin, you know, the predictive, the simulation, the analytics, all of this starts with actually having data. And I don't think that people realize, you know, to best make use of these future offerings is to have a wealth of data. You know, you need at least probably about 5 years worth of information to make any sort of large, huge, dramatic change. And so the advice that I recommend to people, you know, before you even start to look at building your fully functional digital twin sort of model or experience, is to actually just set up start collecting data, start collecting information on your products. If you've got databases full of them and they're live and they're coming in and you're documenting and storing them, then you are already ahead of a lot of people who have either just started or haven't quite started, and you have a big chunk of the equation that is actually required to go forward. And I think that understanding isn't really widely known. So, the big first question is, what is your data? And where is your data? And if you can't answer that, then you need to take a step back. And this is all after having the problem identified, by the way. This is not just grab random data and you'll start making money. This is identify the problem in the data and go on from that.
Yeah, I think that I can also share my views, and I also agree with what has been said. Start with your needs, with defining the purpose, what you want to achieve. I think that we have been repeating and repeating. So I think that the strategy starts really there to define your workflow. It's also important to understand your current landscape, in your ecosystem, because this topic about digital twin is really about creating the links and the connection instead of creating another silo. So it's really important to start small and start creating connection instead of having a full digital twin solution that is completely disconnected for your current systems. And I want also to say that invest on the human part that I also mentioned before, and also on the product, because as you know, I think that probably you know a recent documentary, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So really, you need to care about your data, because it's so important. Also, this is related to an ethical point of view. We need really to be careful about using data for the public good and not against us. We saw what is happening in other industries, so it's really important that you invest on a good solution that is really helping you to have a solution that is in order to help your company to be human-centric, empowered by data. So a lot of people say, I want to be my company data-centric, but I think that the point is to be human-centric, but empowered with the possibility of data, and in this case, by digital twin. So that is my advice.
Great. Igor, were you trying to say something? I wasn't sure.
No, it's more kind of I praise the tool vendors that are moving in the direction and providing us the tools. And I just want to add that it's still not complete, and the journey is not complete. And somebody in questions marked that, if we have APIs to all the components, and I think that's the key point. But latest trend, probably 10 years of building platform versus monolithic products, and building components versus kind of a complete applications. I think this is very helpful in enabling digital twin. So very often you may select platforms that would be kind of backbone of the digital twin implementation, and then add components that fit in the specific needs. The problem sometimes that if this component is closed or platform is very vendor oriented, then it becomes difficult. So I would encourage software vendors to continue this path of platform development and component development and API development, so data could be extracted and exchanged, and bidirectionally exchanged. But I think even at this point, we have enough tools.
Yeah, no, definitely a positive trend towards the platforms for sure. So.
Yeah.
I want to give just everybody time to, all of our panelists time to give one last piece of advice to the people that joined us today that are heading on their digital twin journey or further down it. Rick, I'm gonna start with you. What parting advice do you have to give to the audience?
Yeah, so I'd come back and say one of the first comments I made is I think people search for perfection before they start, and it's whether you're a Tom Brady fan or who, right? He doesn't know what play he's going to run in the Super Bowl until he's in the Super Bowl, right? But he does know he's going to run up. He does know he's going to play a game, and he does have a playbook. Your playbook should be full of foundational items related to the digital twin. That's BIM, that's lean, that's IoT, all of those things, and connect them for a compelling business case initially and build energy from that, right? That's been my approach, and I think it will work for you if you're trying to get started.
Marcia?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my advice is really start the journey. So don't be afraid. So even if you see others that are already, more advanced, but it's important to start. And if you need any help, join a community. So in the UK, for example, we have the UK BIM Alliance, but I'm sure that in other countries there is something similar. So that really is something that you will be surprised how much, different people they want to help in order to share and advance all together.
David, parting words.
I love we're all on the same page for this. Start small. There's no need to jump into something complex and overly difficult. I think once you start making those small connections and those small bits and pieces that come together, it will snowball and suddenly become this much bigger thing. So don't start big, start small.
Mr. Quancy.
Yeah, there's kind of three key roles, three personas that everybody here, implementing a digital twin needs to know the answer to. Who's the product manager or the subject matter expert who's really focused on the value and what value first, what second. You need a full stack web developer. The beauty is with the technology these days, they go a long way. And you're going to need a system architect. Because long-term, you want to hit that long-term vision, not just short-term. You need somebody who kind of understands the big picture of data flow within the company. And folks like Igor's organization, I know they'll do some of that. All of that kind of depends on what you want. But again, you need someone, subject matter expert, product manager type, systems architect, full stack web developer. That's kind of the minimum to really get moving and not thrash too much.
Igor, you have the last word on advice to the audience, the participants today. So,
thank you for the honor. But I would join everybody who kind of provided advice and follow up on Marja, saying you just start a journey and identify low-hanging fruit, but following on Jim advice, don't forget a big picture and have it in mind so the one implementation doesn't prevent or hinder the moving forward toward a kind of more comprehensive digital twin. And from us as implementers, tools are there. Identify your goals and find the people. You can come to us or somebody else, and they will find a way to implement it. There are tools available. But as long as business goals are defined and kind of ROIs are defined, then it's achievable.
Great, thank you. And I want to thank the participants, both on the panel. It was a fantastic, this is a great panel. I've really enjoyed this, but also people that joined, that shared in the polls, and also put in some great questions. I think if you want to gauge a metric to gauge how how complex and how interesting and potential value of a topic is, you can look at the Q&A panel, and our Q&A panel is full. And I apologize that we weren't able to get to them on the live recording, but we will get back to you on those. And there are some really, really good questions in there. I wish I had seen them before we started. Maybe I would have added a couple more in. But anyway, thank you all for participating. I'd like to, Igor, I'd also like to just say another word of thanks to AMC Bridge for all the organizational effort put into this. And these are not easy to pull off. So definitely appreciate that. I hope everybody has a great evening and a great day. And thank you all again.
Thank you, everyone. It was fun.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you.